The crimson warning lights bathed the Galactic Council's emergency chamber in blood red. Shadows as Ambassador Veltar's four-clawed hands trembled uncontrollably over the ancient distress beacon. His species had survived 3 million years of galactic peace, but now they were watching their civilization die in real time. "Status report," he croaked, his voice translator struggling with the panic coursing through his system. "Council." Leader Mordok's 6 compound eyes dilated with pure terror as he read the incoming data streams. Kepler Sector 7, gone. Andorian trade route, consumed. 23 star systems in 18 rotations. Veltar. 18 rotations. His voice broke. Yeah, that's faster than our ships can even travel between worlds. The chamber fell silent except for the soft clicking of mandibelza. Sound that hadn't been heard in these halls for millennia. It was the sound of species-wide fear. Veltar watched the holographic display update in real time, red zones spreading like infection across the galactic map. Each dot represented billions of lives. Entire civilizations that had taken millions of years to evolve, reduced to nothing more than organic fuel for the Void Plague's endless hunger. "The Centauri Defense Fleet?" Veltar asked, though he already knew the answer. "Absorbed, Mordok." Whispered, "All 15,000 ships. The Plague took their technology, their tactics, even their crew's memories. It's learning from every victory. Here's the terrifying part, and this is where most people don't understand how truly screwed. The galaxy these weren't just mindless space bugs. The Void Plague was intelligent. It studied its prey. It adapted. It evolved. Every weapon fired at it became part of its arsenal. Every defensive strategy became useless within hours." Veltar's claws hovered over the emergency beacon controls. The device hummed with ominous energy, ready to send a desperate message across the cosmic void. But to whom? Every advanced civilization in the galaxy had already fallen or fled to the Outer Rim territories. It's one option," Mordok said slowly, his voice barely above a whisper. "No." Veltar's eyes widened in horror. "You cannot be serious." Archive of Forbidden Worlds lists 47 species from Deathworlds. Extreme classification planets where survival requires. Mordok paused, searching for the right words. Where survival requires becoming something else entirely. The tension in the room was suffocating. These were beings who had lived in paradise worlds their entire evolutionary history. Worlds where the greatest predator was maybe an aggressive herbivore. The concept of a death world, a planet actively trying to kill everything on it, was nightmare fuel for their species. Their planet classification reads Extreme Hazard, Death World Class 9. Veltar read from the archive, his translator struggling with concepts that had no equivalent in peaceful galactic languages. "Veltar, Class 9 means. It means their entire planet has been trying to murder them for millions of years, and they won. Think about that for a moment. While the galaxy's species evolved on garden worlds with gentle rains and friendly wildlife, these humans evolved, dodging asteroid impacts, surviving ice ages, fighting creatures that could tear them apart with bare claws. But here's the kicker. They didn't just survive, they thrived. They turned their death world into their weapon." Mordok's hands shook as he accessed the classified files. They called themselves ... humans. Carbon-based, bipedal, originated from a world called Earth. Their history. He paused, his 6 eyes blinking in sequence as he processed the data. "Their history is genocide, Veltar. Not just of other species, but of their own kind. They've been at war for their entire recorded existence. And we're going to ask these killers for help? Our children are dying," Mordok said simply. "Bye-bye, da-da-da-da-da-da." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Veltar looked around the chamber one final time. Representatives from 1,000 worlds stared back at him with the desperate hope of the doomed. He thought of his own offspring, probably already consumed by the advancing plague fleet. He thought of the nursery worlds where billions of young ones would never grow up to see the stars. His claw stabbed down on the beacon. Activation switch. The message that launched into hyperspace was simple, desperate, and terrifying in its implications. "We are dying. Please help." Meanwhile, 6,000 light-years away, on a small blue planet in an unremarkable solar system. Captain Jake Mitchell was having what he thought would be a boring Tuesday. The global peace accords were finally being signed, humanity's first real attempt at worldwide cooperation. Historic? Sure. Exciting. Not so much. That's when every screen in the Pentagon simultaneously exploded with light. "Sir," his aide, Lieutenant Cooper, burst through the door without knocking. "Sir, you need to see this immediately." Jake looked up from the peace treaty documents, annoyed. "Out, Cooper. Unless the world is ending, I'm busy making sure we don't blow each other up anymore." Sir Cooper's voice cracked with excitement and terror. "It's not our world that's ending." The alien transmission filled the room with impossible mathematics and quantum frequencies that made Jake's teeth ache. But the message itself? Crystal clear. The entire galaxy was being eaten alive by something called the Void Plague. And we're asking for help from ... humanity. Jake stared at the data streams showing the scale of destruction. Billions dead. Entire star systems ... gone. His voice was barely a whisper. Sir Cooper said quietly, "According to their data, they're calling us because they think we double quotes." He swallowed hard. "They think we're natural-born killers." Jake studied the tactical breakdowns of the plague's capabilities: adaptive technology, hive-mind intelligence, self-replicating bioships that consumed everything in their path. Then he looked at humanity's response options: nuclear weapons, biological warfare, tactics born from millions of years of surviving on a world that never stopped trying to kill them. But here's what really got his attention. The timestamp on the message was sent 3 days ago. Plague had consumed 7 more star systems. Since then, Jake's jaw tightened as the full implications hit him. "Maybe they're right about us, Cooper." His voice carried the weight of human history. Every war, every struggle, every impossible victory against overwhelming odds. "Get me Admiral Brooks on Priority Channel. Tell her ... He paused, looking one more time at the images of dying worlds. "Tell her we're going to war." The question hanging in the air as the transmission ended wasn't whether humanity would help. It was whether the galaxy was ready for what humanity considered help. The hyperspace tunnel collapsed around the UES Vengeance like a closing fist. And Admiral Lisa Brooks felt her stomach drop as reality snapped back into focus. 27 years of military service had prepared her for a lot of things, but nothing could have prepared her for this. "Jesus Christ," she whispered, staring through the bridge's reinforced viewport. Below them, the world of Cathara was dying, not the quick death of orbital bombardment or the slow death of ecological collapse. This was something far worse. Planet was being consumed alive, like a cancer patient, watching their body devour itself cell by cell. Lieutenant Mike Torres, her weapons officer, had gone completely pale at his station. His hands hovered over the controls, trembling slightly. I'm reading hundreds of contacts, maybe thousands." Brooke stepped closer to the tactical display, and her blood ran cold. The Void Plague's bioships weren't just orbiting Cathar, they were feeding on it. Massive organic vessels, each one larger than a city block, pulsed with sickening rhythm as they extended grotesque feeding tubes down to the planet's surface. "Mother of God," Torres breathed, "they're the size of Manhattan. Some of them are bigger." The ships looked like diseased organs floating in space. Their hulls writhed with veins and arteries that glowed with stolen bioluminescence. Every few seconds, one would contract like a heart pumping blood, sending waves of absorbed organic matter up through the feeding tubes. Here's the thing that made it truly horrifying. You could see the planet changing in real time. Green continents were turning brown, then black, then gray, as entire ecosystems were stripped away, layer by layer. It was like watching a time-lapse video of decay, except this was happening in minutes, not years. Admiral Communications Officer Emma Davis called out, her voice cracking with barely controlled panic. "I'm receiving multiple transmissions from the surface. It's the survivors... They're begging us to run." Brooks moved to the communications station, her jaw set in a hard line. "Put them through." The voice that filled the bridge was broken, desperate, speaking in the universal translator's mechanical tones. Unknown vessels, flee while you can. Nothing stops the plague. Nothing. We had 15,000 ships, weapons that could crack moons, shields that could deflect stars. All gone, all consumed. Save yourselves. Emma looked up at Brooks with wide, terrified eyes. Admiral, their entire defense fleet. It lasted for hours. For hours. Brooks had been in battles that lasted longer than that over a single city block. She watched another feeding tube descend from one of the bioships, this one targeting what looked like a refugee camp. Thousands of life signs on her scanner simply ... vanished. How many people were on this planet? She asked quietly, before the attack. 12 billion, Torres answered. His voice was hollow. Current readings show ... maybe 200 million still alive, and dropping fast. That's when something truly nightmare-inducing happened. One of the larger bioships, a monstrosity that had to be the size of Manhattan, began to split open along its length like some cosmic flower blooming. But instead of petals, it revealed rows of smaller ships nestled inside its body cavity. Parasites, Brooks said, her voice filled with disgust. It's birthing more of them. Smaller ships, though still massive by human standards, swarmed out of their mother vessel like angry wasps. They immediately began their own feeding patterns, extending secondary tubes to areas the larger ships hadn't reached yet. Torres was staring at his scanner readouts in disbelief. Ma'am, these things, they're not just consuming organic matter. They're learning from it. Each ship that feeds is upgrading its technology based on what it absorbs. Think about that for a moment. These weren't just mindless predators. They were adaptive, intelligent, constantly evolving. Every planet they consumed made them stronger, smarter, more dangerous. No wonder the galaxy's greatest civilizations had fallen so quickly. Admiral Emma's voice was barely a whisper now. The survivors are saying something else. They're saying these things have been doing this for thousands of years. Moving from galaxy to galaxy, consuming everything, then moving on. Brooks felt a cold rage building in her chest. This wasn't war, it was extermination. These creatures treated entire civilizations like cattle, farming them for resources before moving on to the next feeding ground. Tell the survivors to get underground, she ordered, her voice carrying the ice-cold authority of someone who'd made the hardest decisions imaginable. Deep underground, meaning shafts, subway tunnels, anywhere the feeding tubes can't reach. Torres stammered, "What are we going to do?" "Our entire task force is 12 ships. They have thousands." Brooks studied the tactical display one more time, her mind racing through possibilities. Conventional weapons wouldn't work. These things adapted too quickly. Energy weapons. They'd probably absorb and redirect them. Kinetic bombardment? They'd just regenerate from the organic matter they'd already consumed. But there was one thing. These parasites needed that humans had learned to weaponize long ago. All ships arm nuclear warheads, she commanded. Target the feeding structures. The bridge fell silent. Torres looked at her like she'd lost her mind. "Ma'am, those are connected to the planet's surface. The radiation will contaminate everything within a 1,000-mile radius. We'll kill the parasites," Brooks finished for him. Her smile was predatory, carrying the genetic memory of a species that had crawled out of nuclear winter and kept fighting. These things need organic matter to survive, right? Let's see how they like glass and ash. You see, this is where humanity's Deathworld origins became an advantage. Most species in the galaxy had never faced extinction-level events. Humans. We'd survived asteroid impacts, supervolcanic eruptions, ice ages, and yes, nuclear war. Knew that sometimes you had to destroy everything to save anything. But Admiral Emma protested. "The fallout will be temporary." Brooks cut her off. "Radiation fades. Extinction is permanent." The 12 ships of the human task force spread into attack formation. Each one carried enough nuclear firepower to glass a countenance standard. Armament for a species that had once built weapons capable of destroying their own world. "All ships report ready," Torres announced, his voice steadier now. There was something comforting about having a clear target and overwhelming firepower. Fire, Brooks commanded. What happened next would be remembered across the galaxy for millennia. Nuclear fire rained down on Cathara's surface like a cleansing storm. Not at the cities or the survivors, they were already underground, but at every single feeding tube, every organic structure the plague had grown, every acre of corrupted biomass. The bioship's reaction was immediate and terrifying. They writhed like wounded animals, their feeding tubes recoiling from the radioactive hellscape below. Across all frequencies, they screamed a sound that was part whale song, part dying wind, and entirely alien. But here's the beautiful part within. Hours, cut off from their food source, they began doing exactly what any desperate parasite would do. They started eating each other. Unknown vessels came a transmission from the planet's surface. The voice filled with awe and terror. How did you know to poison the ground? Brooks watched through the viewport as the plague ships tore into each other with savage desperation. Her smile carried no warmth, only the grim satisfaction of a predator that had just out-hunted the hunters. Where we come from, she said simply, sometimes you have to burn the field to save the crops. The question hanging in the radioactive air wasn't whether humanity could fight the void plague. It was whether the galaxy was ready for the kind of warfare humans considered normal. The ruins of New Geneva Station stretched across the barren landscape like the skeleton of some massive beast, its twisted metal bones reaching toward a sky choked with ash and debris. Staff Sergeant Danny Rodriguez pressed himself deeper into the shadows of a collapsed communications tower, his rifle steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. 3 months. That's how long humanity had been playing the deadliest game of cat and mouse in galactic history. And the terrifying part? They were winning. Movement on the horizon, whispered Corporal Amy Chen through his earpiece, her voice barely audible. Even through the encrypted channel. 3 contacts, bearing 270. They're coming in low and hungry. Rodriguez felt that familiar surge of anticipation mixed with raw, primal fear. Not fear of dying any Marine worth his salt had made. Peace with that possibility long ago. No, this was the fear of a hunter who knew his prey, could think, adapt, and remember. The Void Plague had learned to avoid human ships after those first nuclear baptisms. But they still had one fatal weakness. They still needed to eat. Roger that, Chen. Remember the drill we let them get comfortable? Let them think they've found? An easy meal. Rodriguez adjusted his scope, watching the 3 bioships descend through the atmosphere like diseased eagles. Then we remind them why Earth is classified as a death world. The ships were smaller than the massive feeding vessels they'd encountered at Cathara, but still impressive by human standards. Each one was roughly the size of a city block, their organic hulls pulsing with that sickening rhythm that had become humanity's most hated sound. Veins of bioluminescent fluid coursed along their surfaces like infected arteries. But here's what made Rodriguez smile in the darkness. These particular bioships were scouts, hungry, desperate scouts that had been cut off from the main swarm for weeks, probably surviving on whatever scraps they could find in dead systems. Chen, you seeing what I'm seeing? He asked, tracking the lead ship through his crosshairs. If you mean 3 very stupid bugs about to make the last mistake of their very short lives, then yes. The bioships circled the grain storage facility. Like vultures, their sensor organs grotesque things that looked like eyeless faces, scanning for threats. Rodriguez held his breath as they completed their reconnaissance. Come on, you alien bastards. Take the bait. What they found was exactly what their primitive intelligence was programmed to seek. Massive silos filled with organic matter, tons of grain, protein, cultures, and biomass just sitting there, undefended in the ruins of human civilization. 2 creatures that had consumed entire worlds. This looked like finding a convenience store in the desert. The first ship extended its feeding. A tuba nightmare appendage that writhed through the air like a living cable. Rodriguez watched it pierce the outer wall of silo 7 and begin the feeding process that had destroyed countless civilizations. Easy pickings, he muttered. Just like every other species they've wiped out. But here's where human psychology becomes a weapon. All species in the galaxy, when faced with extinction, either fought head-on or ran away humans. Humans had learned something else entirely during their millions of years on a death world: patience, the ability to take pain, endure loss, and wait for the perfect moment to strike back. Contact established, Chen reported. All 3 ships are feeding. Thermal signatures indicate they're drawing from multiple silos. Rodriguez watched through his scope as more feeding tubes snaked down from the other 2 ships. The bioships were literally gorging themselves, their holes expanding as they absorbed the stored biomass. They had no idea they were eating their own death, you see. Those grain silos hadn't been abandoned. They'd been prepared. Every ton of grain was laced with thermite compounds. Every protein culture was saturated with white phosphorus. Every single calorie was designed to burn at temperatures that could melt steel. "They're really going to town down there," Chen observed. "Hull expansion at 40% and climbing." "Good," Rodriguez said, his finger hovering over the detonator. "Let them get nice and full." The feeding process was mesmerizingly horrible to watch. The bioship's organic holes bulged and stretched as they pumped thousands of tons of material into their digestive systems. Their bioluminescent veins pulsed, brighter as their metabolism kicked into overdrive, processing the unexpected windfall. "Base, this is Hunter 7, Rodriguez whispered into his comm. "Subjects have taken the bait, requesting permission to light the candle. Hunter 7, this is Base. You are cleared for fireworks. Light 'em up." Rodriguez took a deep breath. Thinking about all the worlds these things had consumed, all the civilizations they'd reduced to organic slurry. "This is for everyone you murdered, you alien sons of bitches." His thumb pressed down on the detonator. The explosion was visible from orbit. 3 months of careful preparation, chemical engineering, and pure human spite erupted in a pillar of fire that reached into the stratosphere. The thermite charges didn't just explode, they transformed every grain silo to a furnace hot enough to melt titanium. The bioship's reaction was immediate and satisfying. They shrieked across every frequency as molten metal and burning phosphorus flooded their digestive systems. Their feeding tubes whipped frantically as they tried to disconnect from the death they'd willingly consumed. Too late. The superheated compounds were already spreading through their organic systems like molten lava through a garden hose. "Oh man," Chen laughed over the comm, "they are not happy campers." Rodriguez watched through his scope as the creatures that had devoured entire star systems thrashed in their death throes. Their holes split open, venting burning atmosphere and screaming alien biology into the void. One by one, they crashed to the surface as burning wrecks. "Baze, this is Hunter Team 7, Rodriguez reported, unable to keep the satisfaction out of his voice, package delivered with extreme prejudice. "The bugs are learning what happens when you mess with Earth's children." But while Rodriguez was celebrating his tactical victory, 600 light-years away aboard the flagship U.S. Retribution, Dr. Helen Martinez was making a discovery that would change everything. "Admiral Brooks, you need to see this immediately," she called out, her voice tight with excitement and terror. Admiral Brooks hurried over to the science station, where Martinez was staring at quantum resonance readings that made no sense. "What am I looking at, Doctor?" 3 months of data from every plague ship we've encountered," Martinez explained, her hands flying over the holographic displays. "I've been analyzing their quantum signatures, trying to understand how they coordinate their attacks." The display showed a complex web of quantum entanglement patterns stretching across the galaxy. Each plague ship was connected to others by invisible threads of quantum communication. "They're not independent organisms," Martinez continued. "They're more like ... fingers on a hand, all controlled by something massive." Brooks leaned closer, her blood running cold as the implications became clear. "How massive?" And Martinez's voice shook as she answered. "The size of Earth's moon, Admiral, hidden in the Void Nebula beyond the galactic rim. It's been there for thousands of years, sending out these swarms to consume entire galaxies." The tactical display updated, showing the probable location of the source entity. It was ancient, vast, and completely hidden from conventional sensors. "If we don't stop it at the source," Martinez whispered, "it'll just keep making more. Every ship we destroy, Every victory we achieve, it's meaningless as long as that thing is out there. Brooke stared at the data for a long moment, feeling the weight of an entire galaxy's survival on her shoulders. Rodriguez and his team could kill 1,000 plague ships, 1,000,000 even. But as long as the source remained intact, they were just fighting symptoms. Then we end this where it started, she said grimly, her voice carrying the finality of a death sentence. Prep the fleet for deep space operations. We're going into the void. The question hanging in the darkness wasn't whether humanity could find this cosmic horror. It was whether they could kill something the size of a moon before it finished consuming everything they'd ever loved. The void nebula stretched before them like the entrance to hell itself, a swirling mass of dark matter and cosmic debris that had been hiding the galaxy's greatest nightmare for millennia. Colonel Marcus Thompson pressed his face against the reinforced viewport of the UES destroyer, his knuckles white as he gripped his assault rifle like a security blanket. Sir Pilot Kate Williams called from the cockpit, her voice tight with barely controlled terror. We're about to breach the nebula's inner boundary. Whatever's in there, we're about to meet it face to face. Thompson had been through 3 tours in Afghanistan, 2 in Syria, and 1 classified operation he couldn't talk about even in his sleep. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared him for what emerged from the cosmic darkness ahead. Mother of God, he whispered. The ancient biostructure wasn't just big, it was incomprehensibly massive. A living moon that pulsed with the stolen heartbeats of 1,000 dead civilizations. Its surface writhed with organic cities, breathing forests, and what looked like the preserved remains of entire worlds it had consumed over the eons. Kate Thompson said quietly, "Tell me you're seeing this too, because if I'm hallucinating, I need to know right now." "I wish I was hallucinating, sir," she replied, her voice cracking. "But no, this is real. That thing. Jesus Christ. It's feeding on everything we've ever lost." The biostructure's surface was a nightmare tapestry of absorbed civilizations. Thompson could make out the twisted remains of cities, the preserved husks of starships, even what looked like entire ecosystems that had been incorporated into the creature's flesh. It was like looking at a cosmic cancer that had metastasized. Across the galaxy, look at the thermal readings, Kate continued, her pilot training keeping her focused even as her mind reeled. Those aren't just organic structures. That thing has absorbed the technology of every species it's consumed. It's not just a predator, it's a living museum of galactic extinction. Thompson felt rage building in his chest like molten steel. Every glowing vein on that monstrosity represented billions of lives snuffed out. Every pulsing organ was built from the remains of civilizations that had taken millions of years to evolve. This creature hadn't just committed genocide, it had committed cosmic sacrilege. "All those planets," he said, his voice hardening to match the fury in his eyes. "All those people, families, children, entire cultures with their own hopes and dreams. This thing has been playing God with entire civilizations." But that's when the real nightmare began. The biostructure's surface erupted like a disturbed anthill. Hundreds, then thousands of plague ships poured out of organic docking bays that opened like festering wounds. But these weren't the scouts and feeding vessels they'd been fighting for months. These were warforms bigger, faster, and deadlier than anything humanity had encountered. Contact. Tactical Officer Ryan Davis screamed over the ship's intercom. Multiple contacts. I'm reading. Dear God, I'm reading over 10,000 ships inbound. The plague warships were nightmarish to behold. Where the feeding vessels had been organic and almost plant-like, these were clearly designed for one purpose: total annihilation. Their hulls bristled with weapons that looked like they'd been grown rather than built, massive biocannons that pulsed with malevolent energy. Here's the truly terrifying part. These ships moved with perfect coordination. No communication delays. No tactical confusion. They flowed through space like a single organism with 10,000 bodies, all controlled by the ancient intelligence at the nebula's heart. Admiral Davis shouted, his voice nearly drowned out by the proximity alarm screaming across the bridge. "We're outnumbered 50-1. Maybe worse." Thompson could hear Admiral Brooks' voice cutting through the chaos on the fleet communication channel. "Calm and deadly as a surgical blade. Then we make every shot count. All ships execute Broken Arrow Protocol. We're taking this monster down. With us? Broken Arrow Protocol? Thompson had heard rumors about it during his classified briefings, but he'd never imagined he'd live to see it implemented. It was humanity's final solution, the tactical doctrine they'd developed for enemies that couldn't be defeated through conventional means. The human fleet didn't scatter, or try to establish defensive positions like any sane military force would do when outnumbered 50-1. Instead, they did something that defied every rule of space combat. They charged. All ships full burn toward the primary target, Brooks commanded. Ignore the escorts. Our objective is that biostructure's core. Everything else is secondary. The 12 remaining ships of the human task force lit their engines and screamed directly into the swarm of plague vessels like bullets fired from the hand of an angry god. This wasn't a battle planet, it was a suicide run with a purpose. Kate, you understand what we're doing here? Thompson asked, watching the tactical display as enemy ships closed in from all sides. Yeah, she replied, her hands steady on the controls despite the hell erupting around them. We're not trying to win a dogfight. We're delivering a package. That package was the largest collection of antimatter warheads humanity had ever assembled. Each ship carried enough destructive power to crack a moon, and they were all aimed at the same target, the ancient intelligence that had been orchestrating galactic genocide for thousands of years. The first wave of plague ships slammed into the human formation like a tidal wave of organic fury. The UES Vengeance took a direct hit from a biocannon and simply vaporized. Its crew of 200 dying in an instant of superheated plasma. Vengeance is down, Davis reported. Liberty and Justice are taking heavy fire. Thompson watched through the viewport as the UES Justice burned past them. Its hull split open and venting atmosphere, but still flying toward the biostructure with grim determination. Its captain's voice crackled over the comm. This is Justice. Actual, we're going in hot. Tell my wife I love her. The Justice impacted the biostructure's surface in a nuclear fireball that lit up half the nebula. Direct hit on the primary target, Davis shouted. Minimal damage to the structure, but we're opening holes in its defenses. Thompson felt his own ship shudder as enemy fire found its mark. The lights flickered, gravity fluctuated, and he could smell the acrid smoke of burning electronics. But they were still flying, still pushing toward their target. Hull breach on Deck 7, Kate reported. We're losing atmosphere, but the engines are still good. More human ships died around them, brave crews, flying their vessels into the maw of hell because someone had to stop this cosmic cancer from spreading any further. The UES Retribution rammed directly into a cluster of plague warships, detonating its antimatter core in a blast that cleared a path through the enemy formation. For Earth. Thompson roared as his ship's hull began to buckle under the strain of enemy fire. Round him, bulkheads groaned and sparked. Emergency klaxons wailed, like the screams of the damned. But they were less than 1,000 kilometers from the biostructure's surface now. Thompson, Kate shouted over the chaos. You can see the target, or some kind of central core structure about 2 clicks down from the surface. We can punch through the outer shell. ... Do it, Thompson ordered. Whatever it takes. The question hanging in the burning void around them wasn't whether they could reach the target. It was whether humanity's final gambit would be enough to kill something that had survived for millennia by consuming entire galaxies, and whether any of them would live to see the answer. The life support systems aboard the UES Retribution were dying with mechanical gasps and electronic death rattles. But Lieutenant Sarah Parker had never felt more alive. Around her, the bridge was a hellscape of sparking consoles, twisted metal, and the acrid smell of burning electronics. Yet through the gaping holes in the hull, she could see something that made her blood sing with righteous fury. The biostructure's inner workings were exposed like the dissected corpse of some cosmic god. Vast chambers stretched into the darkness, each one filled with the preserved remains of entire civilizations. She could see the skeletal remains of starships, the crystallized husks of alien cities, even what looked like entire forests turned to organic glass. Jesus, whispered Weapons Officer Tom Anderson, his hands dancing over a console that was more fire than function. Sarah, are you seeing this? That's not just a ship or a creature. That's a tomb for every species this thing has murdered. Parker's jaw clenched as she stared into the abyss. Each chamber represented millions of years of evolution, billions of lives, countless stories that would never be told. This ancient parasite hadn't just consumed civilizations, it had collected them, like trophies. Antimatter warheads armed and ready, Anderson reported, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. 30 seconds to impact. All systems showing green for maximum yield. Through her earpiece, Parker could hear the other ships in there. Suicide Squadron reporting similar status. 12 vessels, 12 crews, 12 different ways of saying goodbye to everything they'd ever loved. But here's the thing about humans even. When facing certain death, they found ways to make it meaningful. Over the fleet comes, someone started singing Amazing Grace. Within seconds, other voices joined in rough, scared voices belonging to people who knew they were about to die but were determined to do it on their own terms. You know, Anderson said, somehow managing a grim smile as plasma fire licked through a hull breach near his station. When I joined the Navy, my recruiter never mentioned the part about flying into the mouth of cosmic horror while singing hymns. Parker almost laughed. Despite everything, leave it to humans to find humor in the apocalypse. Tom, when we signed up to defend Earth, I don't think any of us expected to be defending the entire galaxy. Well, he shrugged. The pay's the same. Either way, that's when Parker got her first clear look at what they were really fighting. Through the massive rent in their ship's hull, she could see the biostructure's core pulsing, writhing mass of organic technology that had to be the size of Manhattan. It was beautiful in the way that cancer cells are beautiful under a microscope. All elegant curves and deadly purpose. But surrounding that core were the real horrors. Suspended in some kind of organic preservation fluid were the remains of worlds. Not just pieces or fragments, entire planetary ecosystems, miniaturized and stored like specimens in a vast alien laboratory. Tom, she said quietly, that thing down there isn't just feeding on civilizations, it's preserving them. It's like some kind of cosmic museum of extinction. Anderson followed her gaze and went pale. My God, how many galaxies has this thing consumed? Through the quantum entanglement communicators that somehow still functioned despite their ship falling apart around them. They could hear similar discoveries from the other suicide ships. Each one was finding new horrors, new evidence of the ancient intelligence's eons-long campaign of galactic genocide. This is Commander Rodriguez, on the Vengeance, came a voice through the static. I'm seeing what looks like Earth, not our Earth, but another Earth, from another galaxy. This thing has done this before. Parker felt ice water flood her veins. Another Earth meant another human species, another civilization that had fought and lost against this cosmic cancer. How many versions of humanity had faced this moment? How many had failed? This is for everyone you killed, she whispered, her finger hovering over the detonation switch. Every world, every species, every story you stole from the universe. Countdown reached 0. What happened next was beyond human comprehension. 12 antimatter warheads, each one containing enough energy to power a star, detonated simultaneously. In the exact center of the biostructure's core. But this wasn't just an explosion. It was the unleashing of fundamental forces that hadn't been seen since the birth of the universe. Reality. Self seemed to tear apart as matter and antimatter annihilated each other in a cascade of pure energy. The biostructure's ancient flesh, reinforced by the absorbed technology of 1,000 civilizations, simply ceased to exist at the molecular level. For a moment there was a new star burning in the heart of the Void Nebula, and that star collapsed into itself, creating a gravitational anomaly that dragged the rest of the biostructure into oblivion. But the most incredible thing happened in the seconds before the explosion consumed everything. Across the galaxy, on a million different worlds, every single plague ship suddenly stopped. Just ... stopped. The feeding vessels that had been draining planets went silent. The warships that had been terrorizing star systems drifted powerless through space. The scout vessels that had been mapping new targets for consumption simply fell out of hyperspace and died. It was like someone had flipped a switch and turned off the galaxy's nightmare. Admiral Lisa Brooks. floating in an escape pod as her command. Ship burned like a funeral pyre behind her. Watch the biostructure's death throws through her pod's tiny viewport. Her uniform was torn, her face was streaked with blood and tears. But her smile was pure satisfaction. Her comm system crackled to life with incoming transmissions from across the galaxy. Species after species, world after world, all confirming the same impossible truth. The plague was dead. Known vessels, came Ambassador Veltar's voice. Filled with awe and something that might have been fear, the swarm has ceased all activity. Every ship, every drone, everything has simply ... stopped. How did you know that would work? Brooks wiped the blood from her eyes and stared out at the expanding debris field that had once been humanity's greatest enemy. Because we've been fighting monsters our whole lives, Ambassador. The only difference is, this time, the monsters picked the wrong planet to threaten. There was a long pause before Veltar spoke again. Your species turned death itself into a weapon. No, Brooks replied. Watching the rescue ships from a dozen different species converging on the human survivors, we turned love into one.
Ow.
Nobody threatens our family and lives to tell about it. The silence that followed was profound. Across the galaxy, billions of beings were processing the same incredible truth. Earth, the death world that everyone had feared, had just saved them all, because that's what humans do. When faced with extinction, they don't just fight back. They fight back with such ferocity, such complete commitment, that even cosmic horrors learn to fear the sound of human laughter in the dark. The galaxy was safe. The plague was dead. And the universe had learned why Earth was classified as a death world, not because it created monsters, because it created the kind of people who looked monsters in the eye and said, "Not today."